So, hello, welcome to Rock, Paper, Swords, a historical action and adventure podcast. And we're here with the Historical Novel Society Conference 2024. And one of the keynote speakers here is Diana Gabaldon of Outlander fame and many other books. So, welcome,
thank you.
Diana Gabaldon.
Nice to be here.
And is it your first Historical Novel Society?
No, I don't come to them all because they're all over the place. But I've been to one in London and one in Vancouver.
All right. And where have you come from to get
to be here?
Yeah.
Well, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I think I remember that's where I came from. It's been a lot of travel this year.
Fair enough.
Okay, so the 9th novel in the Outlander series came out in 2021, I think. Hotel the Bees, If I Am Gone.
That's right.
Are there any plans for more in the series?
No, yes, I'm working on book 10 now.
Okay.
Well, I would say even as we speak, except I'm obviously not.
Right now.
And do you know when that's going to come out?
Every time I tell people that I think it's coming out now, it's all over the internet within moments, and then it's not out then.
We don't want you to get hate mail like George R. R. Martin.
Yeah. Well, also you just don't know what's going to happen, with one thing and another.
Yeah.
The show gets in the way occasionally, though they're wrapping up the final season right now, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so that was the next question, actually. So this is the last season now.
Yep.
And then there's a spin-off series in the works at the moment?
There is, yes. Very interesting. Yeah, well, I told them, several years ago as I was working on stuff, they said, what else do you have? And I said, well, I've always wanted to write the story of Jamie Fraser's parents, because they were involved in the earlier Jacobite risings and so forth. There were three, in fact, 1715, 1719, and then the big one with Bonnie Prince Charlie. Right. There's actually one back in 1698, but we don't worry about that. Yeah. Anyway, so I knew a bit about his parents and all that. And so I told them that, and they said, oh, this is fabulous. Have you got the book? And I said, no, but I know a lot about it. Yeah. And so I wrote them a rather detailed synopsis as to what I knew about it. And they went ahead and sold it to Stars, at least for one season. I told them there will be 3 books. I should live so long. They're smaller books than the Outlander ones, and to cover the 3 phases of the Jacobite Rising in the early 1700s. But I will be writing the first one parallel with finishing book 10, because I normally work on more than one thing at a time. I'm never stuck. Something is not working, I just work on the other thing, right. Shift around.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, I have a sort of a benign form of ADHD in that I can see 8 different things happening at once. Consequently, I don't write in a straight line, and I don't write with an outline. I write where I can see something happening, and then when I'm finished, if I know what happens next, I write that. If I don't, I see, what do I see, and I write that. And later we figure out how it all hooks up.
Do you think that character trait is what led you to do the sort of jumping the timelines and sort of having the modern day and the past? I mean, that's sort of fitting from one thing to another. Do you think that was to do with your benign ADHD?
My brain anatomy. I don't know. It was mostly an accident in that when I began to write a book for practice, I just, started writing with just a little tag of something that I could see. And essentially I said, well, I like Scotsmen. I'm going to write a book about Scotland and all that. And so I began basically with Jamie and wrote a bit with him. Then I was thinking, well, must have a lot of Scotsmen, because of the kilt factor. But it would be a good idea, I think, if I had a female character to play off these guys, and we will have sexual tension. That's always good. And so about the 10th day of writing, I introduced Claire. And I launched her into not exactly a pub, but a cottage full of Scotsmen to see what she'd do. Anyway, I was at this point thinking she was an 18th century person. So she walks in, finds all these Scotsmen, crouched around the hearth, muttering to each other. They all turn around and look at her. And I'm thinking, why? Does she look odd? What's going on? Anyway, she walks in, and one stands up and says, my name is Dougal Mackenzie, and who might you be? And without my stopping to think, she just says, my name's Claire Elizabeth Beecham, and who the hell are you? It kind of went from there. So I fought with her for a couple of pages, trying to make her talk like an 18th century woman, but she was not having any. She just kept on making smart-ass modern remarks. And so I said, I'm not going to fight with you all the way through this book. No one's ever going to see it. It doesn't matter what I do. Go ahead and be modern. I'll figure out how you got there later. So it's all her fault that there's time travel.
That's actually
Right.
really, really interesting, isn't it?
That is,
So that
yeah.
you're just totally led by the character
Mhm.
in your head.
Mhm.
I mean, we've had things like that in our own books,
Oh, yeah.
but not quite to that.
Not quite that.
Yeah,
The whole
that's-
series
Yeah.
is come out of it. That's
Well,
it's
hey, you
amazing.
start somewhere and see what happens.
Well, sometimes you think like divine inspiration, you know, that
Oh, yeah,
idea
yeah.
come into your head, that character was real.
Yes, exactly.
And look
Mhm.
what it's led to for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? If you hadn't
Yeah.
followed that route
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
fought against it,
If
you
you'd-
might have had
yeah.
a decent
Mhm.
historical fiction novel that never went anywhere because it
Yeah.
didn't have that
Well,
special
exactly
spark.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was writing this book in order to learn how to write a novel. This was not the novel I was intending to write. I thought I'd write, a mystery novel because that's what I read the most of.
Mhm.
But I was inspired, so to speak, by a character in Doctor Who. And it was from the Patrick Troughton years,
Oh, yeah.
the War Games sequence.
Right.
So a young Scottish gentleman named Jamie McCrimmon. And he appeared in his kilt, and he had this one very striking line, which took my my notice. And I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, that's kind of fetching." Anyway, I found myself thinking about this the next day in church, and I don't claim divine inspiration, but I was in church, and I said, "Well, you want to write a book? It doesn't really matter what you write. This is just to learn how. How do you organize a big
Yeah.
thing like that?" I was a scientist in my previous life, so. And basically I can write anything, but it's a different style and a different format. So I needed to learn how you do that. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to, write a book. So what shall I write? And I was thinking, well, historical fiction would be the easiest thing. I am a scholar. I have access to a huge library. I can look things up. And if I can't make things up, I can find something.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, where shall I set this? And having seen the Doctor Who character, I said, fine, Scotland, kilts, why not? So that's where we began, and that's why
Nice.
Outlander is set in Scotland.
That's amazing.
Nice.
That's brilliant.
Hey, you pull one thread, you don't know what's going to unravel.
Yeah. Well, we've still got this.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'd seen on there's a website called Fantastic Fiction.
Oh.
That you have a novel in 2023 called Red Ant's Head, but it says it's not published.
Well, that's because
So-
I haven't written it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was it. What's the story?
That's a really
there?
old one. Yeah.
Right. So how did they know then? Was it announced?
No, it wasn't. I have been hanging around on the CompuServe Literary Forum
Right.
for the last 20 odd years. Some of them very odd, but we'd people would just talk about what they were writing, what they were thinking of writing, and all that. And at this one particular point, I was still thinking that I would like to write a modern mystery novel, and I had bits and pieces, and I called it Red Ant's Head because I was intending to use as a backstory for it the story of Geronimo and his fight with the U.S. marshals and
Yeah.
authorities and all that. Anyway, they called him Red Ant's Head because of
Okay.
his tenacity and
Right.
severe bite.
So
Yeah.
it's something that's still in your mind.
Oh,
and
it's still
maybe
in my
will happen
mind.
one day,
Yeah, I have kind of shelved it because the modern side of it would have dealt with two very important issues, which were important, 20 years ago when I conceived this. But they have burgeoned to such a degree that I don't think I can do it because they're changing too fast.
Yeah.
And that was to do with the border, with immigration and, smuggling and things like that.
Right.
Right.
And also with journalistic morals and what is journalism and what is honest journalism, which at the moment of going to press is a very moot point.
Yeah.
So, anything that I wrote now, it would take me at
Yeah.
least a year to write it. And by that time, everything I wrote would be badly out
Yeah.
of date. So,
Moved on.
so I just kind of shelved that for the time being.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, just a couple more questions. Not
Sure.
going to keep you for very long, but
I'm
we've
in no
got,
hurry whatsoever, really.
okay. So
I have
we've
most
got,
of a glass of wine yet.
We've got some people on Patreon that follow us for the podcast, and Susan Nolan on Patreon asked us to ask you
Yes.
why you use time travel in
Oh, she's
Outlander,
already
which we
answered.
talked about, but she also said, what opportunities did it afford you? And are there any downsides? Which I thought was an interesting
Oh,
question.
now that's an interesting question. I have not really found any downsides,
Right.
but that may be because I work in such a patchwork fashion. If I ran into some sort of block, I would just dismiss it and go right somewhere else.
Right.
Okay.
We always ask our guests this question. This is one of our favourite questions.
Hmm.
What music do you listen to when you're writing? If you do, yeah.
I do occasionally. Yeah, I mean, if it's really intense, then I don't. But if I'm just thinking in between or decompressing or whatever, yeah, I listen to almost everything. I was a musician as well as a number of
Right.
other things. I'm
Okay.
72. I've had time to do a lot of things in my life. So, I played classical piano, played with an orchestra.
Did you
and
just
things
say
like that.
72?
I did.
Bloody hell. You don't look 72. Right?
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Well, no, we couldn't believe it because we're looking at
Mhm.
pictures of you online trying to research some questions. And we saw you like today and we're going, that can't be her because she looks exactly the same as those photos from like 20 years ago. So
Hey, you
who's
stay
she
out of the
like?
sun. You don't.
So,
You don't get
a
wrinkles.
compliment.
You do whatever you do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But sorry, the music. So what, do you listen to music when you're
Yeah, I
writing?
do.
What is it?
Yeah, it varies. At the moment, I'm listening to dwarf metal. Windrose.
Dwarf metal.
Dwarf metal. That sounds like something you'd like.
What is dwarf metal? Just heavy
There's
metal?
a band called Windrose, and their shtick is that they're dwarves. They're of course
Right,
full size
right.
men, but
Right.
they're dwarves. And they're
Well, like dwarves, as in like
Little
Lord of the
people.
Rings.
Little
No, like
people,
Lord
yeah.
of the Rings. Or
yeah, but they're not little.
so
No.
like Lord of the Rings, little people, like dwarves from like Mordor or Moria or wherever it is.
No, they've got their own culture,
Okay,
but they're
okay,
very much
yeah.
a warrior culture sort of thing.
Right.
A lot of
Okay.
their songs are about fighting, which always gets
Okay.
my juices going, that sort of thing.
And it's
Yeah,
heavy
but,
metal, like
yeah.
Iron Maiden, the Metallica type stuff.
Yeah,
Have to
I'll have to look
search
that
a little
up.
more melodic in some cases, but they've
Right.
got some nice videos. Look up one called Diggy Diggy Hole.
Sounds brilliant.
It is.
I'll have to check that out.
And also Together We Rise, which is another good one in which they go out on an ice floe to fight a monster who's been burning the local village.
I have to say, this is the most original piece of music that anybody's ever said that they listen to.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what?
It's totally unexpected.
Totally unexpected as well.
Yeah, well, I got this from my eldest daughter, who is an operating room nurse, and she said during the pandemic, you have to really psych herself up to go to work, and so she would find fight song music, as she put it. So she shares her fight songs with me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
we're both like rock fans, me especially. I like the heavier metal.
Mhm.
And we always ask this question, but I don't think anybody's ever replied with something like that, apart
Yeah.
from me.
yeah. He listens to all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing against Mozart either. In a contemplative mode, I might do that, or Pachelbel, but
Wow.
Amazing.
but I really
Thank-
like the Doors for
That sounds
get up and
brilliant.
go.
Yeah, I'm going to have to search this up as well. I have to listen to that. Windrose. you said.
Windrose, it's called.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, the band is actually from Italy. They're all from Pisa,
Right.
Okay, amazing.
but they're
Wow.
singing in very idiomatic English.
I don't know how you can concentrate. We find it hard to focus
Mhm.
when there's like lyrical, things that you can, like words you can make out,
Mhm,
because then you can't really focus.
Mm.
So most people answer, like they listen to stuff without words in it,
Ah.
or like I listen to black metal
Mm, mhm,
because it's
mhm.
just shrieking and screaming,
Yeah.
so you can't make out any words.
Well, there's that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Or classical music or
Yeah.
soundtracks
Uh-huh.
and stuff.
Well,
like
it's true. The first time I watched the videos and listened and so forth, just focused on that.
that. Right.
But after that, the rhythm gets you, and
Yeah.
you're not really paying attention to the words because you know what they are.
Yeah.
They're going along.
That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
no, but as for focus, that's part of the ADHD thing, is that I can focus on
Yeah.
more than one thing at
Yeah.
a time. I used to read books for recording for the blind, and it was too boring just to read, so I would sit there and knit while I did it.
Yeah.
Sent
Oh,
people
I
around
don't
from the
know.
newspaper to take pictures of me doing it.
Wow.
I said, it's not hard, it's just a simple cable stitch.
It was hard for us. I certainly
Oh, hey.
couldn't do that. Read and,
You don't know till you try.
I definitely couldn't.
Well, thank you for coming on and having a chat with us.
You're more than welcome.
Diana.
It's been a
And,
pleasure.
I hope you will agree to come on the podcast and have
Oh,
a
absolutely.
full
Yeah.
conversation with us another time. But we
Sure.
don't want to keep you for too long, so you can go network with everyone else, go back to the bar, and we can go and chat with everyone. So
Absolutely.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank
Oh,
you
you
very
too.
much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
Have a
very
great
much.
weekend.
Thanks, and good luck with the rest of your thing.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Diana.
Mhm.
Cheers.
Cheers.